Ted, do you believe you have a soul?
What did you think I would do at this moment when you're standing before me with tears in your eyes? That answer your question?
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Fanzone Debate. We are here for a title match. Looking forward to it. Vacant belt. Mr. Kolkowski won the belt off of Amaru Moses and then dropped it. Dropped it right there. It was upsetting. Frankly, it was hard for us. But no, I'm kidding. But we got two people here try to win the vacant belt. I'm looking forward to it. We got Robert and Joe. Here's how they got here. Robert, he won the last word event, and that's how he's here. He won. He got a title shot, so this is it. It's great. And then Joe, on the other hand, he won a contender match to get here. He had to play Nazario. They've played before. I believe that was the first time Joe ever beat Nazario, too. They had played a few times, and Joe won that one. But these two guys today have played as well, and I'm looking forward to seeing this rematch. We got some good judges here with me, Mr. Brian Michaels. Brian, how are you, my friend? And what do you think of this matchup and that one of these guys is going to be the next Fanzone Debate champion?
Well, I think Kirk just dropped it because he was afraid of me coming back for my revenge.
It's fair.
Let's just get that out in the open right now. These two guys, these two guys are great. Either one of them could deserve this title because they've both kind of been, right there as contenders on the edge, for the longest time. And one of them finally gets to make that final step.
Yeah, Mr. Birch is here as well. Tyler, how are you? And what do you think of this matchup for the title?
I'm excited. I know these guys, a little well. And so I know how much effort they put into other stuff and definitely in debate and just how they've grown over the past couple of years. Like Brian said, they've always been kind of circling it. So I'm excited that no matter how this ends, somebody new is going to have the title. And I think both these guys have earned it. So I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Let's get into it. Here's how it's going to work in this here title match. So the players drafted categories. We gave them questions based on those categories. They're going to debate them tonight before our very souls. They will each get a 1-minute opening for their debate, followed by a 5-minute freeform, followed by a 1-minute closing at the end of the debate. Brian, Tyler, and I will write on our boards who we thought won the debate. 2 out of 3 votes will win you a point. And because this is a title match, the first player to 4 points will win the match. Joe and Robert, good luck, gentlemen. But before we get started, any questions from either of you or anything you want to say to your opponent?
Just good luck to Robert. Whoever wins this will be the first to have all 3 of the titles, which is epic for either of us.
I was gonna say the same thing. So Joe is already winning.
All right. Well, yeah, that's true. I forgot to mention that. Whoever wins this will be the first person to ever hold all 3 at one point or another. So very exciting. Let's get into it, starting with the clip. Once again, season 2 of Ted, now streaming on...
I'm 4 episodes into season 1. Shit's awesome.
It's great. It's great. All right, gentlemen, we are going to kick this off with the first prep category. This is drafted by Joe in the category of sci-fi fantasy. The question is, which sci-fi fantasy film of the 2010s has the coolest villain? We are going to start with Mr. Farrelly. Joe, you have 1 minute to open your argument when you start talking.
I think for me, coolest is defined by presence, aura, and moments that stick with you after the credits roll. And for me, that is Thanos in Avengers Infinity War specifically. He towers above the opposition, both literally and figuratively. He doesn't chase cool moments, he creates them. He walks into every scene calm, composed, and completely in control. He never feels rushed. He never feels desperate. And while everyone else is panicking, he is thinking, calculating, and moving with absolute confidence. Dripping in gold armor, the coolest weapon in that Infinity Gauntlet. Even in massive battles, he doesn't overreact. He overpowers, and he continues forward like it is all inevitable. That level of composure under pressure is the essence of cool. You add to that his commanding voice, his slow, deliberate movements, and that certainty behind everything he says, and you get a villain who doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. He already knows he's the most powerful presence in the room, and that is what makes him the coolest of the decade.
Time. Okay, let's move over to Mr. Castner. Robert, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
Semantically, the term coolest, it's kind of hard to pin down as a description because it means a bunch of different things to a bunch of different people. But in my estimation, a cool villain inhabits a certain type of aesthetic and an attitude. And under the range of qualifiers for this, I think Gideon Graves from Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, Jason Schwartzman is the coolest villain. I think there's something about, like, it's been proven over time with villains, Jaws, Rogue One, for instance, a villain's impact, the shadow they cast, it doesn't have to be reflected on them on screen, but how people react to when they hear their name, even when they're not around. Everybody knows Gideon is the man. He's G-Man. They talk about him with this presence, this aura, as Joe was sort of mentioning. He's the one in charge of everything. He's the head of the evil X's. He bandies them all together to give Scott and his friends and Ramona all these problems. He does it within 2 hours. He has so much swag, drip. His outfit, he built a temple in Toronto to himself. He is cool because of the attitude he embodies.
Time. All right. Graves versus Thanos. Gentlemen, 5 minutes when one of you starts talking. The 1 minute warning when the time comes. If you're talking too much, not letting your opponent talk, I'll throw up to let your opponent talk. Don't make me do that, or I'll just throw up. So that would be bad. 5 minutes when one of you starts talking.
I got to address Gideon. I think if any of our friends did the things that Gideon did, you'd say to him, dude, that's not cool. I think he's a whiny, try-hard, incel beta. He wants to control women, wants to control, specifically he wants to control. I think that's the thing. He can't handle rejection. I think if Scott hadn't kicked his ass, I think we'd be seeing him on that latest Louis Theroux documentary about the Manosphere. That's the kind of personality Gideon embodies to me. Whereas Thanos is the final boss, whereas Gideon just sees himself as a final boss.
I mean, he doesn't try hard at all, Joe, till like near the end when he really has no choice. If Scott didn't have a one-up, if it was just straight hands to hands, he was handling Ramona, Knives, and Scott with no problem. If it wasn't for like Scott having that, he wasn't trying at all up to that point. Everybody just knew him as G-Man. Everybody was revolving their actions around him. Even Scott, to a point, based on how it is that Sex Bob-omb was trying to get discovered. You said something about like Thanos walks into a room and he's always calculating. I don't believe that's true because if he did on Titan, he would know and he would be aware that he was walking into an ambush, but he didn't care. That goes into what you said about a power play and how he's the most powerful. He's a Gary Sue. He's ridiculously powerful. No matter what danger he's in, he's not really in any danger because he's the toughest. And he's got like six most powerful items on his hand to use at all time. And he fucks around when he does that. So,
I mean, like, he was cool when he had two of them at the beginning.
Yeah.
He was cool.
He already made it.
Hello, 6. And you want to bring up that thing on Titan? I'm talking about, it's not just the way he acts, it's the way it looks. You watch the way he controls that reality stone when he's fighting Doctor Strange, all these cool things he does. And then what does he do? He pulls a freaking moon down onto Iron Man. That shit is cool. And then after all that battling, what is that cool line of just all that for a drop of blood? Like, there's so many different ways that he presents himself as cool. Whereas I don't get that from Gideon. I don't have any memorable quotes from Gideon, but I am inevitable. Run from it. You know, destiny comes all the same. All that for a drop of blood. All these things are cool about Thanos, whereas nothing about Gideon strikes me as that.
Joe, you don't have to have memorable lines to be the coolest. You just inhabit an attitude, and he has that because everybody is considering what he's doing at all times, even when he's not on screen. If this was most badass, if this was the coldest guy, if this was the most powerful,
I think
all these things Thanos all these things check a box of things, but they're not the qualifier of what's the coolest. By the way, like, he's kind of a lame magician at points. He could do anything he wants with the reality stone, and he turns things into bubbles and bats. And again, he's just messing around.
Like,
he could have taken care of all of this. If it wasn't for the Avengers being really stupid at a bunch of very different times, given the attitude he had, he would have been gone a long time ago. But they're dumb, and they made worse decisions than him. Also, Peter Quill describes him as both grimace and having a nutsack on his chin. I don't see how that's cool in terms of appearance. Whereas, as I've mentioned, Gideon has the cane that's a sword. He's built a temple, a monument to himself. He's like an Egyptian pharaoh in the middle of Toronto. Like, and everybody comes and like honors him at his temple. Like, that's cool.
That he built for himself. Do you know what I mean? Like,
because he had the money.
Himself. Whereas Thanos is serving the universe. He may be going about it in a slightly,
torturous way, Joe.
But the fact is, he's still fair about it. He's like, that's how he's going to do it. He's just going to snap his fingers. That is cool. Do you know what we call someone who's not cool? We call them a loser. Gideon Graves loses.
He loses because the odds are stacked against him. The odds get stacked against him. He beats everything, and then because Scott managed to get some points and stuff, he got a one-up that he really didn't deserve because of his attitude of the whole thing, and he got a do-over. He got a Groundhog Day do-over, and he knew what he had to do at that time. Gideon had the whole thing won when it went through one streamline of time, as it should have. By the way, Joe,
that's the thing. You talk about Thanos not doing what he should have done. This world, this whole thing of the X's and everything was created by Gideon.
Yeah.
Should have known that Scott would have had a one-up.
No, how would he know that? He was expecting each one to handle him, which they were until they were.
He's the one that's created this league. He is the one that has created this world that he brings Scott and Ramona into at the end of this final fight. He's the author of his own downfall. He
was working towards his goal, and it was working up until that. I don't think he can know. I don't think he's omniscient. By the way, Thanos, he's fair to everybody, like Nebula. Big fan of torture. That's a really cool guy. A guy who's really a big fan of torture and pulling people apart, bringing them together. That's great.
All right. We're going to start closings with Robert. Robert, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
I think the circumstances to be a cool villain in a hipster video game adapted cult classic film, to hang over the whole of the film with merely your name mentioned until the end, when you get a chance to wreck shop, force the main characters into bad positions, and do it all with drip, his white suit, his cane, awesome, charisma, and snarkiness is a tough needle to thread. Gideon Graves manages to do that with a lot of chill and grace until his demise, which, again, Scott got the opportunity to live it all again, so that he knew exactly what mistakes to make and not to make. Thanos, he is a Gary Sue. He's ridiculously powerful. Nothing can efface him because he is the most powerful. That doesn't make him the coolest. He has a line or two. Awesome. It's something that's memorable. Most memorable, not the coolest. He makes his minions fly around in giant donuts. Not cool. The way he looks, not cool. As I said, he could make things into anything, and he makes them into bubbles and bats. Awesome. That's so cool. He's a lame magician. His minions fly around in giant donuts. He can't afford cooler spaceships for them. Not cool. Everything he does speaks of someone who stinks.
All right. Let's move over to Mr. Farrelly. Joe, you have 1 minute to close when you start talking.
Thanos is every element we associate with coolness: confidence, power, restraint, and impact. It comes naturally to him. He never looks out of control. He moves with absolute certainty, delivers lines that feel carved in stone, and ends conflicts with the most effortless gesture imaginable: the snap. Compare that to Gideon Graves, whose entire identity revolves around control, insecurity, and proving something. That energy immediately undercuts any claim to coolness. There's nothing effortless about it, nothing iconic, and nothing leaves a lasting impression beyond that moment. It's all about control. It's all about him being unable to deal with rejection. He is totally uncool. Thanos, on the other hand, he doesn't just win, he makes winning look inevitable. And I think when you're measuring that pure coolness, I think that inevitability beats everything. He defines coolness through sheer presence alone. That is why he's the most memorable, the most badass, and the coolest villain of the decade.
Sorry. Okay, let's bring in the judges. Oh, I love it when the judges and the players arrive in the order that I would bring them in on screen, so I can just go dun, 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 dun. Oh,
you're right.
Talk about
cool.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
You should have picked Tim.
Oh. Tim's not a villain.
Well,
yeah,
depends on if you ask my wife.
depends what questions you're writing.
Yeah, right.
If it involves Satan's Alley, he's a villain.
I was going to make this an all Edgar Wright fight. I thought about it. just to mess with Joe. I didn't.
Tyler, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Great start. I think we're in for a good one. I think Robert had an uphill battle for me personally. Scott Pilgrim's not my favorite thing in the world. I enjoyed the movie, but like I don't have the reverence for it that like all these other people do. And obviously I love Thanos. I think can you see Thanos? There he is. He's looking pretty cool. But I went with Robert, actually. I went with Robbie C's. And I thought that Robert did the uphill battle, convinced me that a lot of what Joe was throwing out about Thanos actually wasn't that cool. Like talking about wow, he turns it into bubbles and bats and stuff. Cool, Joe. And the way that when he talked about his minions and like how as an extension of him, like is not very cool, that his ship looks lame, and like even just bringing up stuff in the movie that he does that maybe doesn't seem as cool as it was being painted as. I thought Joe did a great job on Thanos and did a good job on taking down Graves, but I thought Robert's defense on Graves was also quite good. So I went with Robert. Brian, what are you thinking?
The opposite of everything you just said.
Great.
Starting with Joe. Scott Pilgrim is awesome. So shut up. I have the box set of books right there next to my Infinity Gauntlet, so I like them both.
Yeah.
No, I think that it's one of those things with cool is always the weird question where everyone interprets it in their own way. So it's kind of hard because in the openings you had like Joe talking about how Thanos is always confident and calm under pressure, and his voice and his movements were cool. And then you had Robert talking about how Gideon, he dresses better. He's making fun of the way that Thanos looks and things like that. And so it's a matter of trying to compare things that aren't necessarily the same. I think the middle was kind of a toss-up for me. It's pretty even. I think in the openings and closing, though, is where Joe got me. Because I think the opening, which I kind of described what he was already talking about, and then the closing when he talks about how, Thanos just makes everything so effortless, and he can just, he ends things just a snap. And some of those items that he brought up just kind of, pushed me towards his side.
Okay. Tyler, what do you think?
I think both of them had a great line in Gary Sue, and he would be on the Manosphere documentary. Those are really good. I really enjoyed that. Yeah, so I don't build up to presence. I went with Joe on this one. He started out just really strong, and I think that there was just so much evidence there that he was able to draw from, and Robert didn't have as much. And Joe did a good job of kind of just making Gideon just seem like a lame guy who's just dressing, he's dressing up, he's try hard, he's trying to just control everybody, and he's got his insecurity and attacking his personality. And I think that Robert had some good hits back, but it wasn't enough for me to get over kind of like Brian was saying, Joe's opening and closing. Like he built such a presence, like he's been saying, to Thanos before they even got into the debate. And then I just don't think that Robert was ever completely able to shake that.
Yeah, I forgot the opening line too of Joe. We called Gideon the whiny incel who can't take rejection. That was a good one.
Yeah.
All right. So that means Joe is up 1-0. We're gonna move on to the next question. This was drafted by Robert in the category of horror. Question is, which trap in a Saw film is the most exciting to watch? We're going to start with you, Robert. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
Yeah, Saw traps are always brutal and gory. Exciting's hard to quantify with the traps because they usually end in people dead. There's no real ifs, ands, and buts about it. And not for people who are truly integral to the individual story, the overall narrative of Jigsaw and his accomplices. So as such, I think expanding beyond a one-and-done trap, something consequential to the overall plot, number of instances where things can go wrong and pushes the story forward is more intriguing and captivating. And so I chose the shotgun collar that Amanda fits Lynn with in Saw 3. First, never had a trap where someone had to keep someone else alive, necessary to the individual caught within to survive. So it's already unique, subverts the expectation of a normal Jigsaw situation. Jigsaw's on death's door. There's a lot of situations where Lynn has to kind of MacGyver herself around to keep Jigsaw alive. And then how that plays into like where it goes within the story, and not just Saw 3, but the rest of the Saws after that, makes it more compelling than an individual trap.
Time. God, I love these movies. All right, let's go over to Joe. Joe, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
For me, the carousel trap from Saw 6 stands above the rest. And it's not just because of its brutality. I think it has a real psychological intensity to it, moral stakes and gripping execution. I think by the 6th film in a long-running series, there's a lot going on. You've had a lot of different traps. And I think what makes it feel so fresh is that it breaks away from the normal structure. The trap, for those who haven't seen it, puts 6 individuals on a rotating carousel. They're all restrained, and there's a shotgun aimed directly at them. And William Easton, our main character, he's forced to decide under this immense pressure quickly who lives and who dies. He can only save 2, and each choice requires him to act quickly. He's got to press a button whilst going through pain. And throughout this quick sequence, you get people begging for their lives. You get people shouting different things, and he has to make that thought. And I think as an audience member, it puts you in that position because it's so high stakes, so high pressure that you just can't look away, and you put yourself in that position. I think that's what makes the trap truly exceptional.
Okay, 2 great choices, gentlemen. 5 minutes when one of you starts talking.
Joe, I have a few problems with your trap. First of all, just the general idea of a carousel trap, it's slow moving on its own. Like carousels are just slow moving. So it kind of lacks excitement in that way. There's a conceit in the trap where if he doesn't choose 2 people to die, then they're all going to die. But we just had a situation in the trap right before where he can save his secretary or his file clerk. And the concept is that as an insurance person, he should go for the person who's healthier. But he decides to save the older lady who has a history of diabetes. So he's already emotionally compromised. So we know he's already emotionally compromised. He's going to save 2 of them already. And we don't care about these people at all. We met them for 2 minutes. They have no stakes in what's going to happen, as opposed to what happens with Lynn, where the shotgun caller thing is happening throughout. And there's a lot of situations where things can go wrong, and she has to move her way through it to keep John alive and to keep the story narrative going.
But I think that's part of the issue with it, is that because it is that slow burn that is happening throughout, there's not that constant excitement. I think this is it's a quick trap. I think it's about an 8-minute scene, but I think because you're putting yourself in that position, I think because it's so frantic, because it's so happening so quickly, I think that's what gives it that excitement. I think there's that urgency, and it lacks. The shotgun collar has a little bit of urgency to it, but I think it lacks that ethical dilemma, which is what makes the carousel trap so gripping, is because you're hearing all these people just very quickly shouting out things at him and giving him different things, and it sort of puts you in that position. What would I do in this position? And you don't really have time to think, and I think that's what makes it so exciting, is the frenetic nature of it, whereas I think yours is more of a slow burn, less exciting.
Slow burns can be exciting, and there is an ethical dilemma for Lynn, because at that point she's a pill-popping doctor who doesn't really care as much about keeping people alive as sort of keeping herself going. Like that's the only thing she cares about at this point. So knowing that she has John Kramer on the table, and knowing that their lives are inextricably linked, like it's not just that something goes wrong and she has to fix it. She thinks about killing Amanda, and Amanda goes through all the scenarios of what could happen, what could go wrong. Like she can't leave. She can try to take it off, but things will inevitably go wrong. She's stuck. So there's like points throughout each section of what's going on that makes it interesting. And that interest is what keeps it going. Whereas a trap, like I said, it's always usually individualized, and you really don't care about, like, everybody's fodder at that point. But Lynn's not fodder, because what's going to happen is going to affect her, going to affect Jigsaw, going to affect Amanda, Jeff, and their daughter. There's 5 people of repute who are going to be affected by if she's killed by the shotgun collar or not.
So there's a theme park here, and it has Saw the ride, and it's 3 or 4 minutes of roller coaster, and it's exciting. I think the issue is if you had that for an hour and a half, it loses its interest. But you need, that's about excitement. It's quick, it's frenetic, it's pacey, it puts you in that position. I think you'd say it's not as integral to the overall story, but what it is, it's more of a broader sort of societal critique, because you are forced to kill 4 of your colleagues. I think that is a very interesting position to put you in, which I think a lot of the traps previously haven't really gotten to. I think it's, Saw 1, it was strangers, and I think with Saw 6, I think it's putting these people who know each other in this situation, putting the person in charge of people's lives, and very quickly do I cause myself pain? Do I save people? Do I kill people? Whereas I think your trap is it's emotional, but I think it's less directly tied to any sort of societal critique, and I don't think it affects the audience as much, because I don't think it brings the audience into that world the way the carousel trap does.
Well, I think it is, because I mean the whole thing about Saul is that John always says that he's not a murderer, but he is a murderer because he puts people in the situations and they have the ability to get out. She's the same way. I mean, it's another game, but it's 3 converging games into one, which are layered out, and we don't realize it till the end. And like when she's shot, we don't know if she's actually going to get killed by the caller or not. And we don't know how that's going to play out for what's going to happen with Amanda, with John, and with Jeff, who we were with the whole way. Like yours, like they're subordinates. William doesn't really care about these people. He knows them, but he doesn't really care about them overall. He's just been emotionally strung along. Like the beginning scene with Simone and Eddie cutting off their limbs and having to like figure out who can put more meat on the scale is much more exciting. Like when Jill puts Detective Hoffman in the reverse bear trap and he has to figure out a way to get out, and like a thing we haven't really seen anybody get out of, honestly, like that's exciting. Like yours, it's a slow moving thing with people that don't end up mattering. And then William doesn't matter because he ends up being dead in 15 minutes anyway. So like there's no stakes to it. And I think that ruins the excitement part of it.
No, I think that excitement of being just thrust into that situation where, you know, it's the rules of the trap are very quickly delivered, and that's it. You're under pressure. Now go. And I think that creates that excitement. I think that sort of, that having to make very important decisions about people that you do care about very quickly, I think that creates it. I think yours is too much of a slow burn to be considered exciting.
Okay. Stopwatch. Okay. We're going to start with you for closings. Joe, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
I think the carousel trap is not just another memorable moment from the Saw franchise. I think it's the definitive example of what makes Saw truly exciting at its core. I think it takes everything Saw is known for: tension, consequence, moral testing, and elevates it by placing human judgment rather than mechanical escape. I think the Shotgun Collar lacks that same level of audience engagement. I think its tension largely depends on a single outcome, whether Jeff acts in time. I think it makes it more predictable and less dynamic. I think the carousel trap forces both character and the audience to confront multiple lives, multiple perspectives, and impossible decisions, all in a very quick space of time. There's no clear solution. There's no clever trick to escape, only that inevitable choice and consequence. I think that the level of psychological engagement that you get from that, it's more of a lasting form of excitement. I think the scene happens so frenetically, so chaotically, and so quickly that you're put in that state, whereas the Saw trap is too slow. And that's the biggest issue of it for me.
Okay, let's move over to Robert. Robert, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
Everything Joe was saying about his is exactly the same as mine, except mine has more stakes and matters more to the people who matter in the story, not for Saw 3, but for Saws 4 through 7 as well, because there's resonating factors that happens with the deaths there that goes through. I mean, a roller coaster is not the best example because you're going through it for short-term excitement, but when you're going into a movie and there's plot and there's details that converge together, and Lynn has so many different things that could happen. She could try to escape, boom. She just keep John alive, boom. We don't know what Jeff's going to matter into the story when it comes to the end. What's Amanda going to do, because she's being blackmailed, as we learn later on. Like there's all these converging things that matter, and they affect 5 people's lives, which we don't understand till the end, but we understand that there is a ticking clock, honestly, with John's health. With Joe's pick, it's a carousel, it's slow moving. The acting in it is really bad. There's a lot of different traps that have more excitement, that matter more to the overall story, that have more going on in the carousel. Like the acting in that is bad. We know, like I said, in the previous trap, undercuts what William talks about. It's not as exciting as Joe makes it out to be, even though it's short-term and frenetic.
Okay. Let's bring in El Judgeritos.
I think that's the fastest I've talked during one of these, honestly.
When we did the Last Word event, my wife was sitting on the sofa, and when we got to like a speed bit, she just turned around and went, after I muted, she went, "I've never heard anyone talk that fast ever." It's like, I have points I need to get out.
That's what you said, like 3 things. I was like, I gotta at those points, plus I gotta do my own points.
Yeah.
I'm like, I gotta say like 8,000 things right now.
Tyler, you good?
Give me 1 more second.
Okay. Brian, you good?
Yep.
I'm having fun. This is fun.
Drama today.
You saw the drama today?
Yeah.
So you saw, was it good?
It's a good movie. Good movie.
Tim, I tried to take Bella to the Super Mario, and it didn't go very well for us.
Didn't go very well. Yeah, we'll have to talk about that. All right, Tyler, we're starting with you.
So I thought this was interesting. It's good because I'm very not familiar with the Saw franchise, so it's kind of just based off of what they were saying. I liked how they were both kind of building up what their scenes were. Robert's being even it's a slow burn, but it's something that's integral to the story. It has long-lasting impacts. Joe saying mine is quick, but it's exciting. It's fresh. It's gonna keep your eyes glued to the screen. At the end of the day, I went with Joe on this one, just because I feel like Robert, he had a lot of really good ideas for what makes for an exciting story, but I didn't see how the shotgun collar really played into that as much. It was just mainly kind of everybody else's motivations, and Joe's heaps talking about the carousel, how it feels like it's like a roller coaster. It's quick and everything, and he sold me on the excitement of the actual trap itself.
Okay, I went with Robert again. I thought Robert killed this, frankly. Actually, Joe did well. I thought his description, again, Tyler said, the roller coaster, but I thought Robert actually hit that pretty well by just being listen, slow burns can be exciting. Not all roller coasters are it's not a good thing all the time. And he got it in right at the end. I was waiting for someone to talk about the acting in that scene. It's real bad. It's real bad. Not granted, there's not a ton of great acting across the series, but in that scene in particular, it's pretty rough. But I thought that Robert just did a good job of talking about how the collar is this piece this trap that is kind of a linchpin in at the end of the day many films, and it makes it really exciting, especially when you go back and look at it after having all the knowledge you have at the end of the film. I think it's as he put, very exciting. So I'm with Robert. Brian, the age-old question, am I kooky, or what did you think?
Well, I've seen all these films a couple times probably. I don't really remember them very well. They were describing why they're exciting and things like that. I would have liked a little bit more description in the beginning of exactly what the trap was, because I'm trying to remember these things, and I had trouble to the point where at times during the debate, I'm like, wait, they talking about this person's or that person's? I was getting a little bit lost there as somebody who doesn't remember them well. But in the end, apparently you're Mark Menchaca today because I voted for Joe again. I think that in the end, it just came down for me with Joe making some points about how, with there's multiple perspectives, there's multiple people whose lives are in danger. The whole idea of you can only save, you're dealing with 5 other people's lives in addition to their own. I think that Robert had some good points, but he also spent a lot of time talking about points like how his went on to affect the future films. But for me, that doesn't really have to do with the trap and watching the exciting scene of the trap in the moment. It's more of a retrospective thing. So I went with Joe.
Okay. That means Joe is up 2-0. So a lot of game left. We're going to move on to the next question, which was drafted by Joe in the category of crime. The question is, which crime film set in the UK has the best performances? This question to Kirk, told him what your answers were, and he got hyped. So we are going to start with Joe on this one. Joe, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
The Long Good Friday stands alone as a showcase of performances that don't just serve the story, I think they are the story. Helen Mirren delivers a masterclass in restraint and authority. Every look, every pause, it reshapes her power dynamic. Paul Freeman grounds this criminal world in something tangible, and it makes each interaction feel like part of the larger story. Even Pierce Brosnan, who has no lines, proves how powerful that silence can be, creates menace purely through stillness and presence. But then there's Bob Hoskins. Across the film, he charts Harold Chan's rise in the criminal world and his unraveling just masterfully. And it all comes down to this final scene where this performance is truly unmatched. He gets abducted by his unseen enemies after his entire empire has collapsed. He sits in the back of the car, finally understanding that he has lost everything. And what follows is this silent cascade of emotion, just every emotion on his face. It is perfect throughout the film.
Okay, we're going to move over to Robert. Robert, you have 1 minute when you start.
British crime movies, especially more modern versions, usually follow a standard blueprint, how they operate. It's difficult to find nuance within it, especially when it comes to acting and how it informs the greater world. Everyone usually plays an archetype, maybe beyond the protagonist. But to properly answer this question, I wanted to find something that had a robust cast with maybe well-known actors we trust, trickle-down effect from the top-billed person. And what I came up with was Layer Cake, which is the feature debut of Matthew Vaughn. The cast is insane. Let's consider everybody in it. Daniel Craig, Sienna Miller, Michael Gambon, Tom Hardy, Cole Meany, George Harris, Ben Whishaw. And then there's lesser roles for people like Oscar nominee Sally Hawkins, Bern Gorman, Dexter Fletcher, Jason Fleming, among others. Craig sets the tone and everything trickles down from there. I mean, he's someone who you're used to with a self-assuredness, but in this one, he's calculated, but then his world gets set on fire when unexpected things happen. He becomes desperate, he unravels, and that desperation and unravelness plays into how that goes through everybody else's motivations and what's going on there. It's truly inspiring.
Okay. All right. 5 minutes, gentlemen. One of you starts talking.
We'll compare leads first. Bob Hoskins, I think, gives this performance that is constantly shifting. I think he's volatile in the boardroom scene. After the bombings, you can see him unraveling. And then so complex in this final car ride. Within just with his eyes and his face, he manages to show anger, frustration, bargaining, fear, acceptance, all of these things with just this look in the final car ride. It is a masterclass in acting. I think Daniel Craig, by comparison, it's a very narrow band. I think whether he's under threat or whether he's in control or whether he's facing collapse, I think the performance rarely escapes this sort of composed, detached baseline, which it should feel like he should escalate the performance, but it just feels like repetition, whereas Bob Hoskins escalates that performance.
I don't think there's repetition at all. I mean, he has a plan, and then the plan goes to shit. And there's a point when you don't think he's going to, he tells about all the rules that he tends to follow, and then he has to break all those rules. And then he's pill popping, he's drinking alcohol, he's going through all these emotional things, he's depressed, he's anxious, he's volatile. All these things happen throughout the course. Like, I will not debate that Bob Hoskins is awesome in that, but its best performances, plural.
Yeah.
And honestly, he's the only one. Like, if you wanted to match him to Daniel Craig, fine. Everybody else means nothing. Like, you talked about Helen Mirren's stoic, like, resolve. She just seems like she's doing weird acting choices through it. Like, especially in the apartment after the dinner, like, she's this, and then she's 180 to something else entirely, and then she's back to that. Like there's no emotions like that make sense to me logically, and everybody else is following like a standard pattern. Bob Hoskins, great. Everybody else is not following in line with that, and that's what my problem is. I think Layer Cake has more nuanced ideas, especially because we as an audience have this familiarity with the actors, and they're playing totally against type, and it's believable.
I think you're right. I think Helen Mirren, I think she dominates the scene she's in. I think she shows a lot of restraint. I think she projects intelligence. I think she control. Particularly the casino and the strategy discussions. You can see this sort of control without needing emphasis. I think Sienna Miller's. I think you're not watching the film for Sienna Miller's acting performance. There's other things about Sienna Miller that you're watching that specifically for. I think look at Paul Freeman compared to Michael Gambon. I think Paul Freeman, he just builds this very grounded menace, where I think Michael Gambon is sort of very over the top. It feels there's a heightened performance, and I think it doesn't make the world feel lived in. I think it's rather, but it's too performative, and I think a lot of these performances in Layer Cake, they serve their scenes, but I don't think they serve the world that the movie's trying to create. I think for a film called Layer Cake, I don't think the performances are particularly layered. I think that's the biggest issue with it. George Harris, I think he has this sort of dangerous thing, but I think Pierce Brosnan, through pure silence, creates this menace and imposing without saying a word.
That you see within two scenes, and the same with Paul Freeman. Like, I don't even know what Paul Freeman really does for that movie. Again, in my estimation, this is a sports reference. This is like the 2004 NBA Finals. Your movie is like the Lakers, old Lakers with Shaq and Kobe. Great at the top, bad trickle down. Mine is like the Detroit Pistons, who managed to win because they have a more cohesive unit and more depth behind them. Like Sienna Miller's there to be an agent of chaos. Like I wasn't expecting George Harris. He's like the linchpin, the liaison between the boss and what's going on with Daniel Craig. I don't expect him to go off the rails, but like you see it like simmering when he meets his old friend who got him pinched, and then he like beats the crap out of him, and then everything's simmering below the surface. Same thing with Cole Meany. Like I said, everything trickles down from what's happening with Craig, and that's why I find it interesting. There's tour de force pairings that are going on, not just individually. Craig with Gambon, I think, like makes the movie. You said it's not like it's over the top. I think it's interesting to see a different side because like you know him in a certain way if you're people like us. Or Craig Harris and Meany are just these dudes who are trying to like stitch everything back together when their boss gets killed. Like I think everything has a purpose and everything fits in line in Layer Cake.
I think in the long Good Friday, I think the performances they feed off one another. I think Hoskins' panic triggers reactions, and then Mira's calm redirects those scenes, and then Freeman's presence reinforces the stakes. It feels like the whole movie feels like a living system because of the performances from each actor in each moment. I think Layer Cake, the actors, they deliver their moments, but I think there's not that sense of interplay with these actors that you get. And I think when you're talking about the best performances, I think the performances should feed off each other, and I think that's what the Long Good Friday's performances does, with a bonus of that amazing scene at the end.
All right, let's do closing, starting with Robert. Robert, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
I'm going to repeat what I said. Hoskins is great. Everybody else is following an archetype. I don't know what they're doing that matters. And I don't think there is good interplay because I think Bob Hoskins sort of takes up the entirety of the oxygen. Whereas opposed to Layer Cake, I think everybody has a role. The cast is more robust. The interesting thing about them is that you know them from things, they play against type, and that makes sense for the context of the movie, and their performances are what drive everything. Like, I don't mean to be naive, but there are sometimes in the Long Good Friday where the dialogue gets jarbled, even if you have closed captioning. I can't understand what's going on, and it takes it out of it. The performance, the vocalization, making sure everything is available to be heard, and like that matters for stuff. And everything plays off what's going on with Hoskins, and everything else doesn't matter because he's so encapsulating. But that's like, again, it's performances overall. He's one person. Layer Cake, it takes its cue from Daniel Craig at the top, and then everybody plays their role, and the interplay between them, the scenes all matter, and they're interesting because of how they act against each other.
All right, let's bring in Joe. Joe, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
I think The Long Good Friday gives you performances that change scene by scene as the movie dictates. Bob Hoskins doesn't just play Harold Shand, he dissects him in real time. Explosive in the boardroom, unraveling after the bombings, and in that final car ride, delivering this amazing symphony of fear, anger, defiance, and acceptance. Helen Mirren controls entire scenes without raising her voice. Paul Freeman builds a world that feels dangerous, and Pierce Brosnan proves that you don't need dialogue to dominate a scene. I think you compare that to Layer Cake. Daniel Craig stays in one gear. Sienna Miller doesn't move beyond sort of a surface level intrigue. Michael Gambon leads into caricature, and George Harris substitutes volume for presence. I think this is about which performances actually do the work, and I think on that front it's not even close. I think one film demands layered, evolving performances, and the other settles for consistency, and it's not the good kind of consistency. I think, as I said before, for a film called Layer Cake, those performances aren't layered. And we're talking about performances, and I think that Bob Hoskins' performance in that final scene towers over everything else.
All right. The judges.
Long Good Friday is a great movie, though. I will say that.
These are both great movies. So
they're both.
Yeah, I love both these movies. We can do this without talking about performances. I love the song that plays during that scene in the cafe, the Duran Duran song. And when I heard it in 28 years later, I was like, there's a banger song. There's a banger of a song. Ordinary World, that's it. Ordinary
The Number of the Beast?
Ordinary World by Duran Duran. Yes.
No, I was being facetious. Mr. Michaels, we are starting with you.
I think Robert put it best when he was doing his Lakers Pistons comparison, because I was thinking the whole time that you're talking one film kind of has the bigger, maybe more dramatic performances. The other one has more like a quantity of people that are putting in good performances. It's a matter of how do you judge this? They both made strong arguments for it. For me, in the end, when I look at the question, which one has the best performances? It doesn't say which one has the most good performances, which one has the best. And Joe convinced me that his had the best, with even just the couple people at the top. They're putting in the work, and then everyone else is doing their thing. The other one, I think, had a lot of good performances, but as far as which one had the best ones, was in Long Detroit.
All right, Tyler, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know anything about these movies, so it was interesting hearing them talk about it. I think both of them did a good job talking about the different performances. I will say I did end up going with Robert on this one, just because he was able to do some takedowns on Joe, and the things. So the thing about like the Joe was kind of losing me on was that every single time he mentioned the performances, it was a variation of the same thing for each person. And when Robert was talking about like Helen Mirren making weird acting choices and just 180ing her emotions, that wasn't really addressed. It was just kind of the same thing of she controls the room and everything. And I think that Robert did a good job of explaining what Daniel Craig's got going on, Sienna Hardy, how they are playing against type that you would expect, because sometimes for the performance you want to see them a little bit different. And it was enough for me to put over. It was pretty close, though, I will say.
Well, I agree with one of you. I went with Joe. I agree with Brian, what Brian said. Like, I felt like I do agree with Tyler to an extent. Like, I did think it was close, and I was kind of thinking about it, and I was on I was on Robert's wavelength for part of this, talking about the all of the different actors that are in the movie, seeing them play against type and how that's exciting. But just as I listened more and more, I just kept hearing about Joe's movie and how the acting, specifically Hoskins, but also he brought up Brosnan a lot and how much Brosnan does in the silence with just the face, with his face and everything. I haven't seen the movie. I don't know. And the more I listened to what Robert was saying, I didn't feel like I was getting enough about what the performances were specifically doing, just kind of like what the characters were doing and why that it was cool to see these different like characters together, but I didn't feel like I got enough performance out of it. So that's why I went with Joe. And so that's where we're at. So we are moving on to the next question, and here's where we're at. So it is 3-0. Robert needs to hit this next question in order to stay alive. So we're moving on to the category of sports. We're talking foosball, football, American football. The question is, which American football film has the best ending? All right. Robert, we're going to start with you. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
Sports movie endings are usually defined by the result of the final game or match. Usually as a referendum to the movie, a greater theme at large, how it defines the characters moving forward. Given that consideration that it's usually one way, I actually went with Friday Night Lights, which has the best ending because everyone on the Permian football team is validated by the time the clock runs out, but not because they won, because of what they proved in their loss. Based on what Coach Gaines discusses, Billy Bob Thornton, about the halftime speech about everybody being perfect, and they did that through the course. And everybody is validated, from Mike the quarterback learning how to lead, Don with his abusive father getting some semblance of approval at the end. Coach gets to see these guys who are outclassed do the near impossible and grow as men as a result. Specifically those two guys, but everybody as a whole. It really pushes everything forward more. Everybody gets to their full potential, and it's not because of actually the end result of the game. It's because of the effort they provided and how they found within each other everything they were looking through in the course of the movie by what happened at the end of that game.
Okay. Let's move over to Joe. Joe, you have 1 minute. You start talking.
I think for American football films, I think no ending matches the brilliance of Remember the Titans. I think its final sequence delivers a perfect storm of narrative resolution, character payoff, and cinematic craft. The state championship game is more than just a contest. It's the culmination of the team's entire journey. Racial tension transformed into unity, personal rivalries resolved, and individual growth realized on the field. I think every play is laden with meaning. The trick play where Rev fakes the handoff and runs it in doesn't just win the game. I think it embodies the trust, teamwork, and hard-earned cohesion that links back to every obstacle the team has overcome. I think the camera work captures the action and the reaction of the players and the coaches really well. I think you see Julius and Jerry's shared triumph, this collective embrace of the teammates, the celebratory roar of the crowd. I think all of this is a catharsis that feels earned and complete. And I think from start to finish, this ending doesn't just conclude the story. I think it elevates it. And I think every arc finds its resolution perfectly.
Okay. Friday Night Lights versus Remember the Titans. Gentlemen, 5 minutes when one of you starts.
Joe, and like in football terms, everything that like the final ending of that game is really dumb. Like everything that happens to lead to that point of them winning doesn't make sense narratively, and the last play is really dumb. And then that leads into the actual ending, which is Gary's like his funeral. And the voiceover to explain what's happening is so lame and so undercutting of the emotional resonance that you should have with Gary dying that it takes it. It's very Disney-fied, whereas as opposed to Friday Night Lights, everything is done cinematically. We both have montages technically at the end that explains what happens, so that cancels out. But I think mine's done in a cinematic way that feels more realistic to the characters. And again, everybody's validated not by the actual result, but what it is that they found within each other. I don't find that within Remember the Titans because of the Disneyfication of everything that happens within the end of the game, leading to Gary's funeral.
But I think that's what makes it work so well narratively. I think the ending of Remember the Titans, it resonates because of the character arcs. I think the bond between Julius and Jerry, who were divided before, there's that shared victory, that mutual respect, and I think it's reinforced by what happens on the sidelines and on the field itself. I think every key player has a moment in that game that reflects growth, whereas I think the ending of Friday Night Lights, it's broad for the cast, for the characters. I think characters like Bobby Miles, they're sort of largely absent from that climax, and I think other characters don't receive that sort of emotional closure within their final moments. And when I've been watching a film and watching this team bond and watching the obstacles they're overcoming, I want that emotional resolution for as many characters as I can get.
Booby finds resolve and acceptance and purpose beyond just being the guy who can run really fast and who the offense is all built around because of the injury and the journey that he's on. Gary and Julius don't get to share any moments because Gary's in the hospital room, so we don't get sort of that resolution. Like, yeah, Coach Yost and Boone, like they come together, but they had come together before that in the halftime speech, and like that's all sort of that part. The ending part of the game leading into what's going on with the funeral, it doesn't have the emotional weight as it should because it's a PG movie. I don't think they can go into it. I think it undercuts Gary's impact that we don't get to see the circumstance. We're just here that he's dead and then they're there. And then, like, the voiceover is so schmaltzy, Joe. Like, I want to read what they say. Gary is gone, but his spirit lives on. People say it can't work black and white. Well, here we make it work every day. We have our disagreements, but before we reach for hate, always remember the Titans. Like, that's lame and stupid in 81 when it's taking place, in 2000 when the movie's taking, and now. Like,
I'm sorry, you just brought you didn't even have any sort of panache to it.
Oh, Joe, come on.
I think what Friday Night Lights does, it underplays any sort of emotion at all. I think that I know restraint can be intentional and creates that emotional distance, but I think the audience, as an audience member, you're left observing rather than actually feeling. Remember the Titans, you are, as an audience member, you can feel. You might call it schmaltzy, but what it does, it draws that audience in. It brings that emotion to the surface, whereas what yours does, it suppresses it, and you're left as an observer rather than as a participant, which I think, Remember the Titans, you're more of a participant with that ending. With Friday Night Lights, you're more of an observer, which I think brings it down.
I mean, I feel in the emotional weight of like Mike and Don when they're on the field and they can't get up because they gave everything they could and everybody has to huddle around them. I feel that when Don gets the hug of validation from Tim McGraw, I feel that because I was on the journey with them, that he was undercutting him at every point and doing things psychologically to him that no parent should ever do. Like, I feel that. I don't feel like I'm an observer. And when we get to the actual end, I like that it makes sense from a football perspective, because Coach Gaines has gone through all these things where he has expectations. They don't meet the expectations, and then he has to just move on, which is what football, like running a football program, is all about. So again, the realism of that, the emotional weight.
I'm looking for realism. It's a movie. I'm looking for a movie. Like, you look at that final play and remember the Titans. You know, that final play, the trick play, it shows how far the players come when it comes to trust and understanding of each other. But what Friday Night Lights does, it's a desperate pass. You know, it falls just short. Yes, all right. It emphasizes the realism, but it offers limited narrative payoff. The loss doesn't recontextualize anything from earlier events in the film, and it doesn't. I don't get that strong sense of completion. It ends the season. It doesn't end a movie for me. It ends the season.
It ends the season leading into what we know from the voiceover, and leading that, seasons end, and then we have to figure out a way to pick up. With yours, it's stupid based on how it is that they end it, because nobody would ever end a football game that way. It's so dumb.
All right. We are going to start closings with Joe. Joe, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
I think at the end of the day, I think an ending has one job, and that's to make everything that came before it feel complete. Remember that Titans does exactly that. The final play isn't just a win, it's the payoff to every relationship, every conflict, every theme that this film has built. The characters arrive where they were always meant to be, and the filmmaking ensures that you feel every second of it. I think Friday Night Lights, on the other hand, chooses realism over resolution. The drop pass, the subdued aftermath, the lack of clear character closure, these are deliberate choices, but they come at a cost. And I think the story ends, but it doesn't fully land. One ending lifts everything into focus, the other lets it drift. One delivers narrative, character, and cinematic payoff in harmony. The other fragments them. When you're judging which ending works better, not just as a moment, but as the conclusion of a story, there's only one that I think crosses the line, and it's why, as a fan of football films, we all remember the Titans.
Okay. Let's go to Robert. Robert, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
Joe's ending there was as small to and cringeworthy as the ending to Remember the Titans, based on the lame adult Cheryl voiceover that leads into Gary's funeral, which should be emotional payoff, but it's undercut because we just everything was in triumph. Joe talks about emotion, resolution, but a lot of those characters besides Yost and Boone, nobody really gets individual moments like you would see at the end of Major League, for instance. Especially Gary and Julius, because Gary's in a hospital room. We don't get him with the team. You get the emotional resonance, like I said, of what happens with Friday Night Lights, because you feel like everything's visceral, everything's realistic. That's important. You feel, and everybody gets validated by the end in the loss. And then we think about how that concludes with the seniors going off, with Coach Gaines having to pick up and move on, because that's what running a football program is like. And the season ends, but the memories and how they were perfect with each other lives on. Whereas with Remember the Titans, everything's just, it's played off. It doesn't make any sense. It's silly, and it undercuts itself.
Okay. Let's bring in everybody. Looks like Joe had to cam off for a second. So while we write down our answers, we'll be right back. All right, we're back. All right. I'm starting. Yes. Okay. Great fight. I thought this was good. I've seen both of these movies once. And actually, Remember the Titans a while ago when it was in Fandom. I just saw Friday Night Lights a year ago for the first time. I had never seen it before. So I'm semi-familiar with both films. I went with Robert. I thought that I liked his take on the the way the ending feels realistic to football, but also to the characters. I liked that he acknowledged the fact that both films had these voiceover montage endings, but I liked how he talked about his and how it was again realistic to the moment while also feeling cinematic, because Joe kind of touched on that, oh well, I don't want realism, it's a movie, I want it to feel like a movie, and my ending, it's cool, it's cinematic, and And Robert was like, well, mine is cinematic too. It's just, it's also realistic, and it does have the payoff for the characters and everything. So I went with Robert. And the whole cheesiness of the end of the voiceover thing for Joe. I thought Robert hit that really well. So, Brian, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm glad I wrote down my answer because we had to take a quick break there, and I forgot most of the points I was going to talk about. But I will say when I'm judging Fanzone, I think it's very important for me. I will always judge by the debate, and I will never give in to the pressure to vote for one person just because I voted for the other person several times in a row. That being said, still voted for Robert. I think had a super strong opening. I think that when he started out talking about how even in loss, everyone's validated. The one becomes a leader, one gets a little bit of father's approval. The coach sees the growth in his players, things like that. He kind of went down the line and talked about how everybody's story kind of comes to a culmination in the ending, even though it wasn't your typical feel good victory at the end. So I leaned toward Robert on this one.
All right, Tyler, your vote does not count. Where would you have gone?
So we do have a clean sweep because I went with Robert as well. I think that when he called Remember the Titans Disney-fied, and then everything that Joe said just kind of proved that it was Disney-fied. And he really just kind of peeled apart the layers of that ending for Remember the Titans, and he built a really good one for Friday Night Lights. And yeah, reading the voiceover, it kind of did just show like how corny and cheesy it is, and how like the funeral undercuts it. So I think he did a really good job of just proving to me like why Remember the Titans may not be the best one, which is impressive because Remember the Titans is the one that I've seen, and Friday Night Lights I have not. So.
All right, Joe, are you
just quickly, I don't get a lot of chance to do this because I don't get to judge, but I also have my vote, and it's the TV network where you can watch Doctor Who. It's BBC, Big Bobby Castner. That's where I voted as well because that was awesome. Sorry, I've wanted to do that. I don't judge. So
Big Bobby Castner. All right, we're gonna move on to the final prep question. So once again, we are in a situation where Robert needs to hit this in order to move on. So the question was a general question, spans all of cinema, because normally our champion picks 3 categories. We don't have a champion. We have a vacant belt. So we just we got a general question. They could pick from any genre. And so that question is, what is the best film of any genre that more people should see? This is another one that when I read it to Kirk, he went, oh, that's going to be a great fight. So we'll see what happens. Joe, you do get to start first on this one. So you have 1 minute, Joe, when you start talking.
I think some films arrive and remind us exactly why we love cinema, and Sing Street is one of them. It's a rare original story that combines music, adolescence, and creativity into a film that is both joyous and emotionally honest. I think from the moment Connor convinces his classmates to join a band, I think we're drawn into a world where ambition, first love, and self-discovery are felt as much as they're seen. I think every element of this film works in harmony. I think Ferdia Walsh-Pilo channels the restless energy of youth. I think Lucy Boynton radiates charm and complexity, and Jack Rayner brings humor and vulnerability to the role of Connor. The music isn't just a soundtrack, it's the language of these characters expressing dreams, rebellion, and longing in ways dialogue can never achieve. I think Sing Street is a film that doesn't just entertain, it inspires. It captures the universal experience of growing up, discovering yourself, and daring to dream. It is the kind of story more people need to see, and it's unmistakably one of the best films. You look at Letterboxd, IMDb, I think you'll see those views pale in comparison to films like Perks of Wallflower, Lady Bird.
Whoa, lady, oh my goodness. Joseph, naughty boy. Robert, you now have 1 minute when you start talking.
When you talk about increased viewership for movies, there's so many considerations, a lot of different layers to think about. What genre is it? How was that genre received then and now? When the film came out, how was it received versus now? Have you had discussions about this online? Like, how did it do relative to box office, streaming? Like, all these things should be in consideration when you think about what should people see more. And it could be interpreted in a bunch of different ways. But I went with the 1985 William Friedkin classic, To Live and Die in L.A. This movie is an aesthetic. This movie is an appeal. This movie is about the griminess and is kind of the layer of LA crime movies that talks about like when the good guys have to go bad. And we're not talking about dirty cops. We're talking about when something happens and the good guys and the bad guys, what their relative like motivations are and what their actions are blend into each other. You see a lot of what William Friedkin is trying to do, one of our most important filmmakers, what he's trying to do and how that impacts and influences film and TV from this point and even going into today with movies like Crime 101. You don't have that without To Live and Die in LA.
Okay. All right, gentlemen, 5 minutes when one of you starts talking.
My biggest issue is so Sing Street. I think you look at its views compared to things like Perks of Being a Wallflower, Ladybird, School of Rock, almost similar movies of a similar vein. I think not only does narratively does it stand apart from that, I think also it is underseen. I think original stories like this are a cinematic treasure. But what I think the issue with To Live and Die in LA is it's another shootout, another betrayal, another sleazy chase through a neon-soaked city. I've seen it 100 times. It's a 70s crime film. There's nothing new. There's nothing daring about it. Whereas I think Sing Street stands alone in its genre.
Joe, you saw things after it that impacted. Things like Heat, LA Confidential, Crime 101. Those are all impacted by what happened with To Live and Die in LA. And it's not a 70s movie. It's an 80s movie. It's amoral. There's usually with 70s movies, like again, cops and robbers, lines blend, but you can have a delineation. There's a hopefulness potentiality. With this in the 80s, there isn't that. My problem with Sing Street, it's a good movie. I'm not going to deny it's not a good movie. There's so many other films. You brought up other things. You thought it stands alone. Even just within John Carney's filmography, I don't see much of a difference between this and something like Once or even Begin Again. There's a lot of similar themes. It's taken in a different context. It's a period piece, but it's a similar type of movie in terms of like young people from Ireland looking for a dream in another country. That's Brooklyn, which just came out a year later. When you're talking about music as an identity movie, you mentioned some of them, but they're just Almost Famous, Detroit Rock City, American Graffiti, like all these things. Like just because a movie is good and just because it has good music doesn't mean it's necessarily something that everybody should see when there's a lot of different options that play within the same sandbox and are recognized and are relative. Like enough people saw Sing Street. We're in this community, and I've heard more about Sing Street than I have about To Live and Die in LA, honestly. So I think that also plays into it.
But you look at films like Perks of Being a Wallflower and things like that, you're looking at their reviews on IMDb and it's like 400,000. You go to Sing Street, you go down to about 100,000, barely there. So this is what I'm talking about. I think I think more people need to see it for that reason. I think the issue you brought up, you can see it with other things. You don't get that necessarily that coming of age story that you don't get that in Begin Again. Whereas I think if you go to Live and Die in LA, I think you go back to the 70s crime films that I was mentioning, you go back to those ones. I think everything you can see, anything to Live and Die in LA came before. But you mentioned what films that came out after Sing Street, and it's about Sing Street having that impact, whereas yours relies on what impacts on it, whereas Sing Street impacts on other things.
But I don't know what Sing Street has impacted because it's just a 10-year gap. With To Live and Die in LA, we had 40 years of indication of what it, like William Friedkin, like this is his third or fourth most important movie or best movie, quote unquote. So it's buried down. It's the thing that brought him back in the 80s. And while it did okay numbers, technically, if you look at like box office and streaming, Sing Street relative to like inflation actually has done better. And Sing Street even got like nominations for things like the Golden Globes and recognition of that. So people have seen it and had good consideration for it. To Live and Die in LA had none of that. It just got like a 4K
nominated for Oscars that barely do any box office. That's not a thing or anything. I think the issue we've got here is I don't think To Live and Die in LA does anything new. I don't think it does anything special. Whereas I want you to take it Sing Street. Musical sequences like Drive It Like You Stole It, they don't just entertain, they bring the audience into this into the main character's emotions, the hopes, the fears, the desires, and everything that's happening on. It's a reflection of his depression, his sadness, and the bad things in his life, but presented as joyful, as breaking out of them as joyful. You know, portraying depression and sadness is quite easily done on film, but I think using a character's depression and sadness to portray joy, I think that's a much harder thing to do. And I think that's why Sing Street stands alone. I think that's why it stands apart. I think it's why it's a better journey for the character.
But I think that's done in other John Carney movies, even though they're not young. It's like they're coming of age because they're coming of age in a time, like in an industry that they're not aware of, or they're coming in a setting that they're not used to. Like coming of age doesn't necessarily mean like just because they're young and they're like you said it in a previous debate. Just because you're older doesn't mean you know everything, and that's what these people are trying to do in other John Carney movies and in these other music-based movies. Like, To Live and Die in LA, it takes things from what we had, but it advances it beyond. Like, we haven't had movie. It's not just like an action set piece. Like, it has one of the best like car chases you've ever seen, but it has
Bullet and
that
French
like
Connection were different. Yeah.
like it has the bloodiness. It has this amorality that you're really not used to, in that it's a grittiness, it's a griminess. We don't have that in LA movies until we have To Live and Die in LA, which pushes forward into other things.
We had a whole
When
decade of that in the 1970s. We had a whole decade of that in the 1970s.
No, not in LA, Joe. It's different.
French Connection, Bullet, car chases,
It's
perfect.
different.
All right, we're gonna start closings with Robert. Robert, you have 1 minute when you start talking. I don't hear Robert. Does anyone else hear Robert? He got unplugged, maybe. Okay, good. I'm not the only one. There we go. Yep, you're good.
I must have hit it with my thigh. My apologies. I will hold it up here.
Strong thighs. Okay, go ahead whenever you're ready.
Sorry. Joe is trying to make these connections with things in the 70s. The 80s are a different animal. Freaking took things that he had learned, but he pushed them forward, and they're things like what we have from The Shield, from The Wire, things going all the way forward to this year with Crime 101. It's all built into what happens to Live and Die in LA with the car chases, with the idea that the cops have to be as bad or even worse than the villains. That's all taken from this. It's not just everything that you've seen before. When I'm talking about Sing Street, we have things, music movies, coming of age movies, all this is built in. Enough people, like, I'll tell you, we're in the trivia community. I've only ever heard one To Live and Die in LA question. And that was because it was a William Friedkin thing. I've heard tons of Sing Street things. I only watched Sing Street for the sake of this debate. I felt like I had seen it because most people in the community had talked about it, and I felt like I was there. Like, there's nothing that it does that's more interesting than some of these other movies, even from John Carney's own filmography. It's still very similar. It's a good movie, but it doesn't mean more people should see it than something that's been influential to what's happening in TV, movies, games, even GTA 6. If GTA 5 is built into what's happening To Live and Die in LA, people should see it because of that.
Okay, let's move over to Joe. Joe, you have 1 minute to close your argument when you start talking.
I think Sing Street is a rare, original, and emotionally alive film. I think every beat, the band forming, the rehearsals, the music videos, the stage performances, it feels lived in and genuine. The characters aren't archetypes, they're human beings, and the music doesn't just punctuate the story. I think it's part of the story. 70s style crime thrillers like To Live and Die in LA, we've seen it all before. The neon, chases, shootouts, betrayals. It looks cool, yeah, but the characters don't grow. The story doesn't resonate, and the thrills are forgettable. Ironically, To Live and Die in LA is flat and replaceable. You compare it to The Godfather, Dog Day Afternoon, Taxi Driver, The French Connection, a story of, and it'll come up short. Whereas Sing Street is a story about music and youth and dreaming. It has layers, emotion, character, and style. I think if you value originality, heart, and a lasting impact, Sing Street isn't just better, it's essential. And it deserves a much larger audience than To Live and Die in LA ever will. Live and Die in LA is influenced. Sing Street influences.
Okay. Spicy.
Cool.
Do you guys have lists of these movies in front of you, or are you just like that crazy?
What?
All those movies that they kept saying. Did you guys have a list of them?
There were things that I was thinking about, and then there's things I looked up and what people have considered and talked about online. So,
Okay.
and I have it written down.
You guys are just so rapid fire, is it?
Well, I want a lot of
I
evidence.
I get you.
All right, I'm ready. You guys ready?
Give me 1 second. Okay, I'm ready.
All right, I believe Joe said He had the cam off, but he can hear. His mic is off now. It was on, now it's off. So we will. We're gonna move on because that's what he has said. So we're gonna start with Tyler on this one. Tyler, hit us with your thoughts.
I think both of them really brought it on this one. They had a lot of references and reasoning behind why they chose what they chose, which I was really impressed by. Empirical evidence. I thought it was really interesting with just what they chose. I went with Robert on this one. I think that he was really able to bring a lot of reasons for why Sing Street doesn't stand out as much as it does, with mentions of his own personal community, talking about how it's been nominated and people have seen it, and just kind of his facts that he brought along with it. I think Joe still did a really good job of trying to paint this story, but Robert was just bringing a lot of other examples for movies that he's seen that are similar, even from the same director. And then I think with To Live and Die in LA, it was just Robert's still able to talk about the impact it has today with Crime 101. And Joe kept saying that there was a lot of reasons for why it's been done before, but it didn't feel like there weren't as specific examples for me to really settle on how it had never been seen before, or how it had never been done before.
I went with Robert too. I agree with a lot of what Tyler said. I felt like Robert did a good job of kind of saying, like, yeah, he convinced me of, like, yes, it is a movie by a big director, a famous director who's directed a lot of great movies, but it's also a movie that's, like, lower on his totem pole, and it inspired a lot of things that people know even better. So to see the thing that inspired all that stuff, more people should see that. I've never seen the movie. I've heard the title, but I kind of took that as a good point as well. The whole, like, what people in this community have seen, I didn't use too much because we're a bunch of weirdos who have watched a lot of stuff. But that being said, I did like the point that Robert said of, like, Robert's played in a lot of shit. And when he was like, I've only heard one To Live and Die in LA question. I didn't totally let that affect me, but it was a good hit. I thought Joe did a good job on Sing Street, talking about how it does inspire. It's a movie that is different. But on the whole, I went with Robert. I thought he did a good job on this one. Brian, where are you going?
Well, first, while again it didn't affect my vote either, I really did notice his comment about how he's only heard one To Live and Die in LA question and tons of Sing Street. I think that's more commentary on the writers in this community who sometimes just latch onto something and drive it into the ground. But that's I also went with Robert on this one. I think that while they both made good cases, I think Robert, again, right from his opening, and he kind of referred to it again in his closing. In a previous question, I had said how with Saw, how he talked about how his trap like affected future films, and I said, well, I don't really think those future films are really part of the parameters of the question of what I wanted to hear in the debate. In this case, though, I mean, what he's talked about, how this movie deserves to be seen because you can go watch this movie and see how it influenced so many films that came after it. I thought that was a big factor in why people would want to see this film.
All right. Well, we are moving on to the bonus round. Joe's back. Joe, are you good? All right. Here's what we're doing. Here's how the bonus round is going to work. We have 2 bonus questions prepped because it is 3-2. So Joe needs to hit one of these to win. Robert will need to hit both in order to win. So what we are going to do is I will say the category. I will then read the question. Once I have repeated the question, you guys can answer the question. Whoever says their answer first will be going first. You will each get 45 seconds to start, followed by 30 seconds to close. Did I mention that I randomized the categories to find out what they would be? I did that too. Do you guys have any questions as we hit this off?
No.
All right. Here's where we're going. The first category that was randomized was animation. The question: who is the best animated hero? Again, who is the best animated hero. Yep.
I'll say Miles Morales.
Okay. It's not one of the ones I thought of, but that's fine.
Simba.
Simba, also known as Ellie's favorite film character. Okay,
Don't let that influence you.
No. If anything, it would influence me negatively, but I'm just saying, Joe, you're good. All right, so we are going to start with Robert. Robert spoke first, so he gets 45 seconds on the clock. The question, once again, who is the best animated hero? I apologize, gentlemen. I realized I did not put that in the private chat for you. Who is the best animated hero? Robert, you have 45 seconds on the clock when you start talking.
Interestingly, I think the story of Miles Morales is the story of the American dream. He's an immigrant, son of an immigrant family. He's trying to figure out his way in the world. He's trying to move beyond kind of his parents' approval. He's an uncle who's trying to teach him to be himself. And it's only through when he gets bit by the spider, when he meets all these spider people, that he really understands the impact of what he can do. It's not just beyond what great power comes great responsibility. It's, can you learn how to use your gifts for the best course of action? And what does that define in you as a person? And it really culminates in the what's up danger thing, which I think is one of the greatest animated sequences of all time. He learns to trust himself. He learns how to be the hero that everybody needs. And then he pushes that in across the Spider-Verse to how it is that he can be true to himself when all the odds are stacked against him. It's beautiful.
Joe, 45 seconds for you.
I think watching Simba's journey, watching him overcome that guilt of being involved in his father's death and then finally learning that, I think that's such an interesting character choice to make, because that's what inspires him. That's what pushes him forward, is that guilt. But then finding out that he wasn't responsible, he still takes that action. He still fights against Scar. He still does all these things. I think he goes on a hero's journey. You see the help and the influence Timon and Pumbaa have over him. I think the important thing is with Simba, though, you see that journey go from start to finish. The biggest concern I have with Miles Morales is that his journey is not finished yet. I don't think we can say conclusively that he is the best animated hero, because we don't know where his journey ends and don't know where it goes. I think the difference with Simba, we see that journey from start to finish. We understand his character choices. We understand his motivations. We get that fantastic love story that is realized with Nala, I think, and his friends bringing him together. I think all of that is perfect.
Time. Robert, 30 seconds for you when you start talking.
I think even if you look Miles in just in the first Spider-Verse movie, it's a complete arc and it just pushes it beyond. I think Simba, for the majority, even over half the time, is kind of a whiny cub. He's royalty. He's spoiled. Like, he thinks he deserves the world, and then he leaves everybody behind and lets the whole Pride Rock go to shit. And it's not till Nala comes back and pulls him back that he realizes what he should do. Like, it takes him way too long to figure that out. And through the majority, when he's a cub, he sucks. Whereas Miles, he has a progress and he sucks, but then he gets better.
Gets better. Strike it from the record. Joe, 30 seconds when you start talking.
But I think that's an important part of the hero's journey, is because he was lied to by Scar. I think that's an important part. And yes, he was spoiled at the beginning, but I think watching that transformation is much more interesting than watching someone who kind of is a good person become a better person, than watching someone who is a bit spoiled, who's spoiled, and watching them and seeing the influence that the death of their father and all these other things have on him. I think watching him go on that journey from start to finish, I think it's more interesting and it shows great character development. I think Miles Morales, I think he relies far too much on other people, whereas when it comes to that final end, I think it is just Simba versus Scar, and he does overpower him.
Time.
Even with
them. I take way too much joy in being like, strike it from the record. Wait, what am I doing?
Whoa.
You over there. Whoa.
It's me.
Talk about roller coasters.
You just talked about how it's so nice to have us all in the right order, and then you went.
I know. I should have taken them out and then put everyone else back in. That was my mistake.
Have I mentioned I hate judging speedruns?
You've mentioned you hate all things about speedruns.
And I will continue to.
They'll beat me on a speed round.
See, I'm going to want to do. I hate everything about debate. No.
That's fair. That's fair.
Only when I lose. When I win, I love it.
Yeah.
Fair. What's worse is when you lose on a question you really, really, really wanted to win.
I've had 2 of those, I think, so far.
Mine was when Jacoby beat me on a TED question.
Ugh.
I was so mad. He deserved it, but I was so mad. All right. Brian, how you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Tyler, what about you?
I'm good.
Okay, great. I don't remember where we're at. I think we're at Brian.
I think we're at me.
Okay, go ahead, man.
Yeah, like I said, speed rounds tough to judge. Don't have a lot to go on. I think they were pretty even. There's a good back and forth on that. At one point, I will say, Robert started to pull ahead when he was criticizing Simba, talking about how, he basically walks away for half the film and he doesn't really act like a hero. And he kind of goes into his hiding or whatever. And he just comes back at the end. But Joe was really good about coming back to that, saying, well, he walked away because he was lied to. And once he found out the truth, he overcame that. He went and he still, went back and fought Scar and recovered the Pride Lands and everything. So in the end, it's very close to me. That tipped me over the edge to Joe.
Okay. Tyler, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think it was pretty close. They did a good job of doing their takedowns. Some of it kind of started canceling each other out. I think I went with Robert. I think his opening was so strong that it was hard. It was kind of hard to bring that down. And Joe did as best that he can, but then it felt like Robert just kind of came in and just pointed out all the reasons why Simba isn't the best animated hero. And it wasn't. Joe addressed it, but not enough for me to put it over to Joe. So I went with Robert.
Great. Love being in this situation. I went with Rob. Yeah, I agree. I see what Brian was saying, and I don't actually disagree with him all that much. But I thought that Robert kind of touched on the fact that, like, when he said, even after Simba's an adult and realizes that he was lied to, like, it still takes Nala, like, pulling him back, like, basically, to even get to Scar. I thought that was a good point. And yeah, I thought that just his points. Joe hit Miles really strong by being like he took the obvious punch of being like, we don't know where his story ends, but I think Robert played that really smart. Instead of being like, oh, but he's what up danger? He said, well, even if you just take the first movie as a whole, he's awesome and he's great, and the rest of it is just even more. So I thought Robert did a really good job on this. So I went with Robert. Means we are tied up 3-3.
Can we just pause 2 seconds between the question before the question's asked?
Yes, because I have to pee. Thank you, Joe, for letting me go do that. We're back. Final question. This has been insane. 3 to Joe, then 3 to Robert, and it all comes down to the final question here. So the category that was randomized was mystery thriller. And the question is simply in the private chat. What is the best mystery or thriller of the 2020s? What is the best mystery or thriller of the 2020s?
I'll say weapons.
Wake up, dead man.
That's what I was waiting for. Okay. All right. So we are doing what is the best mystery or thriller of the 2020s. Robert has selected weapons. Joe has selected wake up, dead man. Robert, you spoke first. You get to go first. You have 45 seconds on the clock when you start talking.
The advertising campaign for weapons was so interesting because all you knew was like a voiceover. Kids leave in 2:17 in the morning. You don't know what's happening. Zach Cregger does it in a way that's visually interesting. You do it in a layered approach with all these different characters. You're not sure how it's going to play out until you get to the very end. And the end is so satisfying. Like the mystery of how this is going about is all encompassing for a whole town and how it affects and interplays with every main character, and not just the main characters, but everything that's happening in this town. It's done in a way, it's meted out in a way that like you could try to figure it out, but it doesn't make sense until certain characters come to light. It got a lot of recognition. Amy Madigan won for Oscar. Like the performance in it, keep everything realistic in a thing that seems really fantastical, and to thread that needle is pretty inspiring in the 2010s.
Joe, 45 seconds for you when you start talking.
I think Wake Up Dead Man is crafted exactly how a mystery thriller film should be. I think every clue matters, every line of dialogue has a purpose, and the audience is invited to solve that puzzle. And alongside Benoit Blanc, I think Josh O'Connor gives a fantastic performance. I think Glenn Close is completely underrated in the film. I think ultimately Wake Up Dead Man succeeds because it respects its audience more. I think if you go back and watch Wake Up Dead Man again, I think you can put those pieces together. Whereas I don't think the ending to Weapons narratively works as well. It's satisfying in the moment with those kids chasing Amy Madigan throughout the town, but I think when you go back and go through it, I don't think you can't. It's not necessarily the sort of thing you can piece together a second time. Whereas Wake Up Dead Man has that benefit. I think all the performances are great. I think all the little clues are great. I think the atmosphere is great. Everything about Wake Up Dead Man makes it the perfect mystery thriller film.
Time, Robert, 30 seconds.
I think you can make an argument that Glass Onion might be better as an overall mystery. And we're talking about Julia Garner, Josh Brolin, Alden Ehrenreich, Austin Abrams. They all give fantastic performance. Amy Madigan, as I mentioned, recognized. It doesn't have to do necessarily in terms of a mystery thriller what happens at the end. It's what leads everything into it. When I think about Wake Up Dead Man, I think there's a lot of characters. Jeremy Renner, Kaylee Spaney. There's a lot of things that are unresolved, and everything. Like Josh O'Connor is what drives that, but everything else around it, even the mystery of it, feels a little suspect, especially in relation to Glass Onion, which happened within the same decade.
All right, Joe, 30 seconds.
I think while Weapons does have those mystery thriller elements to it, I think the horror elements are what shine through better. I think Wake Up Dead Man works better as a thriller because I think you are more engaged with that with the mystery that is going on with Weapons. It's the horror elements, it's that creepy running, it's the whole witches ceremony stuff that you get going out there. It's the bloody chase of Benedict Wong when he comes into the garage station car park. But I think Wake Up Dead Man does it differently. I think the performances are great, and I think the best thing about Wake Up Dead Man is that it works so perfectly because it does lead you one way and does make you think it's going one way, and then pulls the rug out from under you. And I think that works better, whereas yours is just a straight throughout.
Jesus, guys. Well, before we get the votes, just congrats on a great match. Phenomenal for both of you.
I give Joe a cross the pond handshake.
Yeah. Well, okay.
Always a pleasure, Joe.
Yeah, that's great.
Joe, can I tell you something? I learned something the other day. I don't mean it to like ruin things. I watched our brawl match. Did you know there was like a scoring snafu?
I did not.
So I had like 14 points going into the end round, right? And I got the 2 and the 4. I should have had 20, but it said I had 19. So technically we were tied after 2 questions. So technically you should have had to answer another question.
Ooh.
Did you know that?
Oh, that's outrageous. I'm going to go back and I don't know. I trust you, to be honest. That's ridiculous. That's outrageous.
Yeah, I got 6. I got
challenge it because that's.
I got 6 in the first, and then 8 in the second, so 14, and then 6 in the last one. But Reiko was kind of under pressure, you know. So I didn't realize it. Like when I'm in it, I'm not necessarily thinking about that. But then
I don't
I
even
watched it back.
score anymore when I play because I'm just like, whatever. I trust you. But,
still love to Reiko though because he did really well. There was a lot going on.
He did well considering all the circumstances. I watched it back and I was like, huh, that's weird.
My fellow judges look ready. Again, as I said, congrats on a great match, gentlemen. Either way, I think it's really impressive from both of you because it's really easy to lose your cool when you win 3 in a row and then lose 3 in a row, but Joe kept it, and it's really easy to lose your cool when you lose 3 in a row and have to keep going. So both of you did a great job. 2 great picks, 2 2025 movies that I really love, that I think are both great. I went with Robert. This is, as Brian alluded earlier, the whole joke. He did the joke, but he said someone else. But yeah, I voted for Robert a lot tonight. I thought Robert did really well on this one, though. I feel like talking about the mystery of the movie, the marketing, and how it builds up the mystery before you even get into the movie, and then you're in the movie and it's layered, seeing the different perspectives, the different characters, the different chapters. I thought was a really good way to build his opening up. And I thought his hits against Wake Up Dead Man being like, there's unresolved things from some of the characters, like why were they even there? Because it's unresolved, we don't care. And Joe didn't really address that. And Joe spent some time being like, weapons or horror. Well, okay, you could say that about a lot of thrillers. Like that, it just didn't really do much for me to argue the semantic of, is it a more of a horror film? Is it more of a thriller? Like whatever. So I went with Robert. Brian, once again, I must ask you, am I kooky?
So you guys picked two of the films of 2025 that I think are two of the most overrated. I think that they both have great performances. I think they're decent movies, but that's about all I can give them. But that's neither here nor there. I think a lot of stuff kind of balanced out. Yeah, you both talked about the great performances in each of your films. You both talked about, the different aspects that kind of cancel each other out. For me, I did lean towards Joe, so Tyler's got to make this decision. I think that, especially when he's talking about just in addition to all the performance, everything, how every clue, every piece of dialogue, it was kind of this puzzle all came together, and just at the end when you thought you knew where it was going, it pulls the rug out from under you and kind of subverts your expectations and becomes a whole level of the mystery at the end. So based on what we had in this short debate, it's a Joe.
All right. Well, that means that Tyler, it all comes down to you, my friend. Where are you going, and why?
I regret accepting your invitation. I think that they both did really good with the time that they had. I wish we had gotten this in a full debate. I think it would have been really great. I think they both talked performances. Like Brian said, it's kind of a lot of it got washed out. I don't know how to build suspense. I'm not going to make a thriller, so I did go with Joe on this. I felt like Robert had a lot of really good ideas, but he didn't have the time to be able to pull them out and explain more on them. Like the thing with Glass Onion being better, with the mystery feeling suspect. I really liked how Joe talked about not only the performances, but he talks about how when it's on rewatch, it really all the pieces come together in a way that you just kind of enjoy more on the rewatch, and that's what elevates it even more. And it was just enough stuff just to win me over.
All right, well, that means your winner and new Fanzone debate champion is Joe Farrelly. Wow. Crazy match. I alluded to it before, and I want to say it again. Congrats to both players. We've never had a vacant belt in Fanzone debate, and both players came to play. Robert's going to get another shot later this season, which I'm really excited about because the dude just continues to impress, and it's really easy to be down that much, especially in a title match setting, and keep it going. And so the fact that he was able to do that and take it all the way to the end was really great. And to that point as well, Joe being able to go 3-0 and think, I've got this locked up. One more, honey, we're done. I'm coming. And he had to go 4 more questions. That's pretty insane. So I thought this was phenomenal. Brian, I want to get some final thoughts from you. You've been at a lot of title matches. You've seen a lot of debates here with me. What did you think of this one overall and of our new champion?
Yeah, no, I definitely feel for Robert because I've been in a situation against my last match with Kirk where I believe he won a bunch of them kind of right off the bat, and I was kind of coming from behind, and I got in several in a row, several wins, but then didn't quite get that last one across the line. But I mean, it's gotta help his confidence that he did so well in the latter half of the match, especially considering that the only 2 clean sweeps of the debate were his. Yeah. So he did very well. Joe, I know, has been at this for longer, and he's had kind of more times where he's been kind of right on the cusp of this, and so I'm real happy to see him finally get across that line, and we'll see who's next for him.
Yeah, Tyler, any final thoughts from you?
Yeah, this sucks having to choose between the two of them because they did such a good job. I was really impressed with just the team that Robert had and just how strong Joe was in the beginning. So either way, I'm just feel bad that I had to choose somebody, if I'm going to be honest. Like, I really just, it sucks. They both did so good. I know that they're going to be back here. I'm really excited to see what they do. And I'm just really happy that I got to see them go the distance. I think that this could be up there for match of the year for Fanzone. Just because they were just powerhouses all the way through.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. This was fantastic. As I said, I really want to thank Robert and Joe once again. Thank you to Nick, Mark, Kirk, all the people who helped make the Fanzone debates run. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll see you real soon. We're going to kick off the next picture very soon, immediately, like next week, starting with Chadwick Webb going up against Alex Martinez. That's going to be very exciting. So we'll see as we kind of get through this picture who Joe is going to have to face next. So thank you so much once again to everybody involved. We love you. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Hands, touching hands, reaching out, touching me, touching you, sweet Caroline.